Thanks for joining us for the Fight for Your Marriage podcast with Charlene and Lori. This is a place where you can find hope for your marriage through Jesus Christ. Hi, thanks for joining us. I'm so glad that you're here for another episode of the Fight for Your Marriage podcast. We have promised a good fall lineup of episodes. I hope you've been enjoying them, and I hope that you are really growing from the guests that we've been having. I know we've been enjoying the conversations. And so as we continue to get into fall and look towards the end of year, we are going to continue with our powerful lineup of guests. And today is no different. Today's episode is going to be special because it's going to speak to two audiences. We're going to talk today about marriage myths. And one group that today's conversation is going to help is people who are currently living with a spouse. You might be living with an in-home prodigal, or you might be happily married or in a restored marriage, living with your spouse, and you're going to get a lot out of today's episode. As we talk, you're going to hear myths that you and your spouse may have believed. But the second audience that's going to gain something from this conversation is those people who are walking through struggles in your marriage. I know that many of our listeners are separated or divorced, and this conversation is going to help you. You know, in this season of praying and standing for marriage restoration, it's a training season. It's a season of change. And this is when you ask God to examine your heart and to help you understand areas where He wants to transform you as a spouse. It's not just all about your spouse who may be gone or your spouse who may be living in sin, but it's asking God, how do you want to change me? How can I become the husband or wife that you want me to be? So I think that by listening to today's episode and hearing these marriage myths, it's going to help you better understand some of the lies that you may have believed in your marriage. And by recognizing those lies, that's how you begin to change and how you can get walking towards restoration. Because once you change, then you can see God change your marriage and redeem and restore it. Well, talking with us today is our guest, Youre Baumgardner. And Youre has served as the Senior Director of WinShape Marriage since 2021. She has nearly 40 years of experience in helping marriages and families thrive. Prior to joining WinShape, she spent 20 years as the president and CEO of First Things First. And today, Youre works with an energetic and talented team in the foothills of Rome, Georgia, building experiences, retreats, content, and resources that help and support people in every stage and season of marriage. So grab a notebook and grab a pen, because today's episode, you're going to want to definitely take some notes. So if you're listening to this while you're exercising or while you're driving, save it now, because you will definitely want to go back and write down some of these nuggets of gold that Youre drops for us as she shares 6 myths that we believe in our marriages. Youre, thank you for joining us on the Fight for Your Marriage podcast. We're excited to have you here.
My pleasure. I'm very honored to be here with you all today.
Nice. Well, tell us a little bit about WinShape and what you offer there.
The WinShape Foundation was actually started by Truett Cathy in 1984. He is also the founder of Chick-fil-A. We have a number of different ministries. We have our college ministry that is based here at Berry College, where students come. They are a student at Berry, and they also have the opportunity to learn leadership and discipleship so that when they leave here and they go out into the world, they recognize, hey, we have this opportunity to be light in the darkness. We also have WinShape Homes, which is group homes and foster care. Mr. Cathy felt very strongly that children deserve to grow up in a safe and stable home environment. So he did a lot for widows and orphans. And then we have WinShape camps. We do camps across the country. So we have day camps that go on for a week. And then we have residential programs, some that are 2 weeks and others that are 1 week. This past summer, we saw almost 30,000 children.
Wow.
And right at 1,500 children gave their life to Christ. over the summer, which is just warms my heart
Yeah, that's
and makes me
amazing.
very
That's
excited
huge. Thing.
for
Oh,
the work
praise
that
the
we're
Lord.
doing. Yes,
Oh, that's
yes. And then
fantastic.
we have a ministry that actually focuses on churches and Christian nonprofits to help them build strong teams
Mhm.
and leadership development. And then WinShape Marriage. And we offer retreats for every season of marriage, everything from preparing for marriage to preparing for the empty nest and all things in between. We also have intensives offered here at WinShape for couples who are in crisis.
Mhm.
And we have another therapeutic experience called the Journey, which is for couples who are not in crisis, but just have a lot going on. For
Mhm.
example, raising your children and caring for elderly parents
Mhm.
and a career. It's just easy to feel disconnected and as though you're just missing conversations. And
Mhm.
so the journey is an opportunity for people to come for about a week and to participate in therapeutic experiences, experiential learning, intentional play, and date nights.
Oh, wow.
So
Wow.
lots of opportunities, and it's all on 27,000 acres. So
Wow. Is that
it's beautiful.
amazing? God has blessed
Yes,
You
you
you guys
guys
are
abundantly.
busy bees up there, it seems.
we are. We are.
Uh,
Yes,
well, I
which I
know
love.
I know marriage is dear to your heart, and
Yes, it is.
you have worked for many years with couples, right?
Yes, yes. Close to 40, right at 40, I think.
40 years. Wow, that's
Yes,
Oh
wonderful.
my
yes.
goodness, that's awesome. Our
That's
ministry's
wonderful.
been
Yeah.
in 30 years, and I
30.
thought that was a lot.
I
That is
love that. Yeah.
awesome.
Well, where did your
Yeah.
passion for marriage come from?
So my why is when I was 17 years old, my father walked into the family room,
Mhm.
sat all of us down, and told us that he was leaving.
Mhm.
And I was a daddy's girl to the core. And so when he said that, one, I didn't understand that he meant, I'm not just leaving your mother, I'm leaving all of you.
Correct.
But as time unfolded, I realized he had no intention of really engaging in life with his children.
Mhm.
And I truly was devastated by that. And I had already decided to major in psychology. I had a brother who was 2 years older than me, who had lots of special needs and was 95% hearing impaired. And so that's what I thought my calling would be,
Mhm.
to work with families who had children with special needs. And then this happened, and I felt the Lord just really showing me that through my pain, through my journey, I could actually take that and minister to others. And I was
Mhm.
all about that because if I could help someone not experience the pain
Right.
that I went through, I would do that all day, every day for the rest of my life. And I've been given that opportunity. And I think I'm as passionate about it today
Mhm.
as I was when I started way back when. And I love getting to walk alongside people. I love growing and learning myself. My husband
Mhm.
and I have been married 35 years.
Amazing.
That's
And
great.
so every day's a learning experience, right?
Yes, every day.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to learn today because we're going to talk about marriage myths. And
Yeah. I
I
love
know
that.
that whatever stage of marriage you're in, we've all believed a myth or two or 10 at one time or another. And we
Yes.
know we have an enemy that wants us to believe those
Uh,
lies and take that as the truth. And sometimes we
yeah.
can really hold on to those.
Mhm.
And so I'm excited to have this conversation. And I said it at the top when I did the introduction, but let me just say it again, that whatever stage of marriage you're in as you're listening to this, you can learn from this because
Oh,
we can
yes.
always be bettering ourselves and working on ourselves and asking God, how do you want to redeem and change me so that I can be the spouse that you've called me to be? So I'm excited to talk about some of the myths that you see in marriages.
That sounds great.
Well, start us off. What is one of the myths that you see?
I think probably one of the most common myths that I have seen through the years is that if you are in a healthy marriage, it will be conflict free.
Yes.
Because after all, if you marry your soulmate, how could you possibly have any disagreements? And the truth is, there is a lot that scripture says about this. There's also a lot that research speaks to conflict. And so I think a reality check for all of us is one, it's important to remember that each person in the marriage is made in the image of God, fearfully and wonderfully made, knitted together in your mother's womb.
Amen.
So you're here with purpose, and you have giftings, and you also have areas that maybe you wouldn't necessarily look at as giftings, but opportunities for growth, so to speak. That being said, you can come into marriage and foundationally share a lot of the same values about where you are spiritually and how you want to grow. And still, because you were raised in different homes with different experiences, you come to marriage with all of that. I was raised in a very structured home with lots of rules. My husband was raised in a home with very few rules and basically no structure. You bring those two folks together, and we can be very well intentioned, but there are definitely going to be areas where we're not going to agree. So a couple of things that I think it's important for couples to know and think about is one, if you tell me that you're in a conflict-free marriage, I'm going to ask you what's happening in your marriage. Because if you're engaging daily with your spouse, it would be really unusual to not experience any kind of conflict.
Right.
The second thing that I would say is that managing conflict well leads to deeper intimacy. When you can come to each other and say, I'm struggling with this issue, I need help. Can we have a conversation around this? To be able to sit down and talk with each other about the issue and recognize we're a team and the goal is to attack the issue, not to attack each other. When you can do that, it takes you to this place of, "Oh, look what we just did. We attack the issue together. We're a team. High five." That it just makes me fall deeper in love with you. And I could tell you about our last fight last week, and how you handle that through the years is very impactful. And the last thing that I would say is so many people think they're not normal if they have ongoing disagreements with their spouse. And the truth is there's probably about 10 things that spouses disagree on throughout the duration of their marriage. It doesn't mean you're less than. It doesn't mean, oh my goodness, if people knew, they would think that we weren't good Christians. No, that is not true. There are things, it could be sex, in-laws, children, money, career. There's all kinds of things that bring us to the table where we don't necessarily agree. But how you handle each other is very vital to your marriage flourishing or coming apart at the seams.
That's great. And that's great for our couples who are walking through restoration, because what we find is they get very panicky once their marriage has been restored and conflict arises. Because they think, oh no, we've been here before, we were separated or we were divorced, we're headed right back there. So learning how to deal with it in a healthy manner is so important.
Yeah. Well, and maybe one thing to speak about, this is another myth, but I think it falls straight in line with this conversation in particular. So many people have read the scripture, don't let the sun go down on your wrath, and take that to heart. So literally at 2 a.m, you're still up and you're still having conversation, except for nothing's being accomplished. And so I often remind couples that if you go to bed and you are angry and you haven't said to your spouse, hey, I think we're sideways, and I know we need to talk about it. I also know that I turn into a pumpkin at 9 o'clock. I mean, my brain just turns to mush at 9 o'clock. So if you approach me with something complicated at that point, I can pretty much guarantee you that we're not going to land the plane well.
Right.
If I say to my husband, I would really like us to have a conversation around this. Could we talk tomorrow morning? Or could you tell me a time that would work well for you, for us to sit down when we both are not exhausted and have the conversation? Things will go much better. And honestly, for us, we can both get up and at 7:30 in the morning have a hard conversation and come to some type of resolution much easier and quicker than if we try to attack it at 9 o'clock at night. So I think that that's an important note for couples, that it isn't necessarily you have to resolve it. It's about going to bed bitter and angry without saying, hey, I love you. I believe in us. Look at all the things we've been able to do up to this point. I totally think we have what it takes to deal with this situation. We should get some good rest, and we should tackle it when we're at our best.
Yes.
Tomorrow.
That's good. That's great wisdom. Okay, what's another myth?
How about marriage is 50-50?
Oh, we've heard that one before.
We all laugh.
You know, it's an all-in kind of thing.
Yeah.
100%, 100%. And I like to talk about the fact that it's not just I'm arriving and I'm all in, but that I am choosing every day to seek to be the best version of me. And that, like, what does it look like for me to be healthy and whole so that in my marriage, I'm a great partner. I'm a great teammate. I am willing to go the distance with you. So often people will tell me, oh, I feel guilty about taking care of me when there's so many other things that need to be taken care of. But the truth is, what you don't have, you can't pass on. So if you're burning the candle at both ends, if you aren't taking care of yourself, what your spouse and your family tends to get, I like to refer to as cold waffle fries, you know? And if you've ever tasted cold waffle fries, they're terrible.
Not good.
So they're just not good. And who wants that?
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to serve those to yourself or to anybody else. And so being able to come up with what do I need to do to take care of me so that I show up as the healthiest version of me in our marriage. That would be the goal, because I don't talk to any couples who say, yeah, I'm great. I'm great with a 50% marriage.
Right.
Nobody says that. What they say is, I want to be deeply known. I want to be loved. I want to know that I belong. I want to know that you would fight for me. And I want to flourish in this relationship. And if that's what you want, then it's an all-in, wholehearted endeavor to be the best you and to walk this road together as a couple.
I love that. And there's so many seasons in life where a person may not be able to give a full 100% because they're going through illness or, midlife changes or job loss or whatever it is. And so for us to say as a spouse, well, sorry, you're not giving all and I'm going to not give all either, that gets you on a crazy cycle.
I think what you're saying is so important for the ones that are still separated or divorced.
Oh, yeah.
Because they need to understand that they have to learn how to react and think before they talk to their spouse while they're separated or divorced or where of the circumstances they're facing. And that they don't react. And then the last thing the spouse hears is negativity and all, you did this wrong. And that we need to encourage them to that we give it to the Lord and we have to end in a positive instead of such all negativity to that person that is out in the far country.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Man, my brain is just running. I think several things. One, we train our brains. And so once you start focusing on the negative, you go negative. The more you go negative, the more you go negative. And so I would say that's one thing to be on the lookout for, because I guarantee you, if I sat down with most couples, they could find some positive things, but it's kind of like they're not seeing those positive things because they're so focused on the negative. So that's the first thing that I would say to that. Second thing I would say, I practice this all the time. It's called HALT. Are you hungry? Are you angry? Are you lonely? Or are you tired? Or any combination of those things. Sometimes, if I'm really frustrated with my husband, I take myself out on a walk and I start praying, and I'm like, Lord, what is happening here? Is this about me, or is this actually about Jay? Because if it's about me, I need to own what's mine to own. And then I really do need to just take to Jay what is something for us to solve for as a couple. And when you were talking earlier just about being separated and also just focusing on you're not doing that right or being negative, I broke my back earlier this year.
Wow.
And when I did that, I literally could do nothing. I could not vacuum. I could not do laundry. I could not load the dishwasher. I couldn't fix meals. I was really not allowed. I wasn't allowed to bend. So there were just so many things I could not do. And I get emotional when I think about it, because not once did my husband complain about doing all the things. And I was just watching. And it was a moment where I was like, hey, it doesn't matter how the clothes get folded, and it doesn't matter how the dishwasher gets loaded, and it doesn't matter how they go in the washer. Really and truly, it doesn't even matter the vacuuming, which if you're not careful, you can be critical about things that don't matter, and you start letting them matter in your marriage. And so I think that that's an important note that most people I know, I really haven't met a single spouse that said to me, I get up in the morning and pretty much before I get out of bed, I'm making my list about all the things that I can do that I know will push my spouse's buttons and get on their nerves. You know, they just don't do that.
No.
And so I think that's important to realize that none of us are perfect. We're all sinners saved by grace.
Amen.
And so what does that look like in our marriage?
Yes, that is so good. So good.
Yeah.
You said earlier that we should want to fight for our spouse, you know, and not necessarily fight with them, but like you said, when you're down, when something's happening, whether it's emotionally through that HALT, hungry, angry, lonely, tired, or physically, when you like go through a crisis like you did, you know, we need to be willing to step in, and we took a vow, you know, whatever we said at our wedding when we made that covenant with our spouse, whether we wrote it or used the traditional vows, we all committed to love in the good times and the bad. And so that's what we need to be willing to do and ask God to equip us. I'm sure your husband needed some extra mercy and grace in that season, just as you did.
He was amazing. Yeah. He was amazing. And I'm just very appreciative.
Yeah. So that's beautiful.
And he was showing you his unconditional love for everything, meaning it could be him that is laid up. Yeah. And you would do the same. And that is beautiful. Yes. That's what real marriage is all about.
Right. Yeah. So true. Yes. So very true.
Okay. Do you have another myth for us?
I do. And this one kind of follows along, and it's that differences will ruin your marriage.
What's that mean?
Well, I'll give an example of my own marriage. I am I would probably say very type A. I'm trying to think about how Jay would describe me. I have a lot of energy, and I can be very passionate all the time. Jay is the party waiting to happen. Like every day is an adventure with him. We laugh a lot, and he's an amazing guy, very deep spiritually, a wonderful leader. And so we're just two really different people, even though foundationally we're absolutely on the same page in so many areas. Well, we could look at each other and decide, well, you're my next DIY project, and I need to help you be more like me.
Yeah.
Because, this is good. And yet, one, I think if we're both exactly alike, somebody's unnecessary. Two, if you have two people who are exactly alike, it's kind of like chili with no seasoning whatsoever. It's really kind of bland and boring.
Yeah.
Right? And so what you bring to the marriage relationship, if I can appreciate the differences that Jay brings and he appreciates mine, and we learn how to leverage those, I think it helps knit us together. It helps us be stronger. It helps us not take each other so seriously or take myself so seriously.
Yeah.
And it helps us to grow. That's where I think God has such a sense of humor, because he's like, I'm going to put you two together, and I know how different you are, but you are my children, and I want you to figure out how to dance together without stepping on each other's toes all the time.
Yeah.
And that's a journey.
Right.
Like that's a lifelong journey, learning how to do that, because as you go through marriage, you mature, you change, you grow, and you learn. And throughout the duration of your marriage, the goal would be to constantly be curious about your spouse. I don't care how long you've been married, that you stay curious, that you watch them and you learn and you appreciate who they are as a child of the Most High King.
That's great. And those differences we can even come to appreciate if we do, like you said,
Absolutely.
Instead of looking at them as negatives, you can look at them as how does that benefit me and as a partner and benefit our marriage?
When my father left our home, laughter really left our family. And one thing that I love about Jay is that he makes me laugh, and he makes me laugh a lot. And sometimes I'm like, no, seriously, we need to be serious in this moment. And we're laughing. But yes, I do think that you can truly come to appreciate the differences and leverage them and make them work for you versus feeling like we're just like this.
And let's talk about laughter for a second, because I have a husband that we laugh a lot also. And I know some people can hear that and think there is nothing to laugh about happening in my marriage right now. Like nothing is funny. Yeah. But I think that we have to be people who look for lightheartedness and laughter and joy in our marriages and in life. I mean, sometimes if you're not laughing, you're crying. But we need to, look for those seasons of, even when it's a hard, difficult season, try to find some levity in it, try to bring joy and laughter. And we don't have to be so serious. We're a very serious world right now.
Yeah. Well, and I think you make a fabulous point that actually, when you are struggling, one of the best things that you can do is go find a way to play together. Yes. And it could be that you intentionally go to a movie that is a comedy, or you go outside and bike together or hike together, do something that you both can enjoy doing together, because in doing that, a couple of things are happening. One, you're giving your brain a break. So I would say when you go do that, talking about the problem is off limits. Right. So we're playing, this is our focus. And when you do that, the dopamine, it's like, I remember when we used to have fun like
Yes.
this until our life got so serious
Right.
with all the bills and the children and the
Mm-hmm.
commitments and the job that we've been robbed
Mm-hmm.
of what it looks like to laugh and play together. So I would strongly encourage couples, even if you are in the thick of it and you are struggling, to find time and go do something that you enjoy together.
I love that. That's great. Good tip. Okay, what's another myth?
This one is a big one, and it is that once children come along, they come first.
Mm,
The culture would tell you that children come first and your marriage will take a back seat and you can pick that back up when the children are gone.
mm,
But there's a lot of research that would tell you that child-centered marriages are the ones that are most at risk for distress.
mm-hmm.
And the reason for that, which we all could say, oh, that makes tons of sense, is that disconnection happens very quickly. When you stop nurturing your marriage relationship and all your focus is on the children, that's when the children leave the house and the couple looks at each other and they're saying, and I married you because
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I know you. Here's what's really vital for us as couples to remember. Marriage, a healthy, flourishing marriage, not a perfect marriage,
Mm-hmm.
a flourishing marriage is like wrapping a big, warm, comfy security blanket around your children.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way that you can have a flourishing marriage is if you take the time to nourish it. And here's the other piece of this. If you make your children the center of your attention all the time, they believe that that is where they belong everywhere,
Mm,
as everybody's center of attention.
mm-hmm.
And we all know that is not reality in this world.
Right.
And so therefore, our role as parents is to disciple them.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the best ways to disciple, because more is caught than taught, right,
Mm-hmm.
is to model what it looks like to take care of you, to take care of your marriage, to be present, to be there for your children, but they're not the biggest priority. I had a friend who came in from work, and the kids were all running to him, and he's like, "Get out of my way! I am looking for your mother, my wife." And I am like, I love that so much
Yeah.
because it speaks to them
Right.
that marriage is first and then you.
Right.
Because the children, their job is to grow and go.
Right.
That's what we're trying to do, is prepare them to grow and go.
Right.
And when they're gone, this marriage, where you made the point earlier, we said, I do
Mm-hmm.
before a lot of witnesses and the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, to be honoring of that, we have to care for this most precious gift
Right.
throughout the duration of raising children and then after they're gone.
I love that. That's good.
Very, very well said.
I'm a 3-weeker empty nester right now. No, I know. I said we've gone on more dates in the past 3 weeks. But no, that's
So-
important. Those years go by
Yeah.
fast. I mean, we
Oh my
raised
gosh.
our 4 kids,
Yes.
and they all moved on and moved out, and it goes by fast. So what you're saying is so true. We can't live,
Yeah.
with the kids as the priority and then think we're going to be able to
No.
reconnect and move on in the next phase of life unless
Yes.
it's intentional.
That is so very true.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That's good. Okay. What's the next myth?
I think the next myth that many believe is my spouse completes me.
Mm,
And that is, well, number one, it's not accurate. Number two, that would be a really heavy burden to bear,
Yes.
right? That you're going to be all things to me. I think the first thing that we have to think about is that what completes you is your relationship with the Lord.
That's right.
So your
Amen.
vertical relationship, where are you in your relationship with the Lord? And are you nurturing that? Because it is through the eyes of Christ and my connection to him that I want to see Jay and to see just the reality of he compliments me. I think one of the coolest things that I've heard Jay say is the gift that I have is to recognize that you're here with purpose and that my job as your spouse is to help you be that, to what God has called you to do, to support you, encourage you, affirm you, and help you to be what God has you here to do, the kingdom building work. And I feel the same way about him. And so it isn't about him only just being all the things. I need friendships. We need couples who are walking the road with us, who are journeying with us, who are a little ahead of us on the journey. People who are behind us as well, that we're encouraging along the way, but that we have a group of people that are pouring into us and we're pouring into others, so that there's friendships, there's confidants, that we recognize that the goal here is you don't complete me, the Lord completes me. And I'm a work in progress for sure. And that together we're working to recognize that we're gifts to each other to help us be who God has called us to be.
I'm thinking about the marriage that is, in the struggle phase right now. And can you imagine saying to a spouse, hey, I want to come alongside you and not be a thorn in your side and not remind you of all the ways you're failing, but I want to come alongside you and help complete you and help you fulfill the mission God has for you. And I think that would be such healing words to maybe a spouse who feels like they're drowning. And I think that's a beautiful sentiment.
Yes. And I think based on couples that I have engaged who are really struggling, so often they'll say to me, we've done everything we know to do. I mean, I've gotten louder. I've said it a million times. I don't know anything else to do. And I think an important reminder for all of us is that just because you have tried everything you know doesn't mean that you have tried all that's available to you.
That's right.
And that there are absolutely resources out there for people who are struggling, and to reach out is a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness. I encounter so many believers who they let so much time go by.
We talk about that all the time.
They don't want anybody to know.
Right.
On average, the research shows 7 years. That's a lot of water under the bridge. So if you start out, if you're sideways and you ask for help from credentialed people who know what they're doing to help you navigate the road. I can remember this couple that I encountered, and I worked for an organization before I came to WinShape, and we offered an experience for couples in distress. And they said, oh, we came to that experience. And he was very passionate about that. And I thought he would have told me it would have been 6 months ago that he had come. But he said, no, it was 7 years ago. And he said, we had divorce papers in hand. We went to our pastor, told him we were getting divorced. And he said, before you do that, I really want you to go to this experience. And he said, we came to that experience angry, madder than hornets. And we only did it because our pastor said, I really want you to do this for me. If you're not doing it for you, do it for me. And And he said, at the end of that experience, we tore up our divorce papers and threw them in the trash can as we left.
Praise the Lord.
And I asked him what was going on. And he said, well, we have 7 children and they were all teenagers. And I was just like, oh, hello. You all had a lot going on.
Yeah.
And the reason the conversation even came up was because they were on the cusp of being empty nesters. And he said, so our 18-year-old is leaving the house and we're going to be empty nesters. And he said, I just think every day about how life would be so different for them if we had kept going down the path we were going. And we didn't ask anybody for help. We just tried to do everything that we knew to do. And when our pastor sent us somewhere, we learned a whole set of skills and a whole bunch of information that actually helped us learn how to do some things differently, to engage each other differently, to have conversations differently. And it changed our trajectory of our marriage. And so I really do want the people who are listening to have hope and to be encouraged that you do have access to resources that beyond what you know yourself, that can help you do things differently.
And don't be afraid to ask for help. You know, if sitting in our churches every week, there's couples that are struggling and they're just embarrassed. And if we would start to normalize that in our churches and saying that, you know, it's okay to say, you know what, we are struggling. This week has not been a great week. And working together to use the tools. You know, we go through job training. We have to go through driver's education to learn how to drive a car. We can't just walk into marriage and think I said I do and I'm going to know how to do it. And we need to use the tools that are available. And the resources. And I love the resources WinShape has that, give you a chance to kind of step out of the real life and get into a repair mode and a healing mode and a refreshment mode. And I think that's amazing.
Let me ask you a question also, or a subject and that you could talk about to our people that are praying for their spouses that are gone, that have committed adultery. They have chosen to leave the family at this moment for multiple reasons. How can they walk through the spirit of forgiveness and still have and want to desire a relationship with their spouse in any way when the time comes, when they change and split their children up and go back and forth and all the scenes that we have when people are going through marriage problems?
It's so hard because it's a heart thing. Your heart feels like it's been pulled out of your chest, trounced on, and it is so hard. Dave Carter wrote a great book called Torn Asunder that walks people through the process of being able to forgive. And I think what I've learned over the years is that lack of forgiveness, that the root of bitterness will destroy you.
You're right.
It absolutely will destroy you. And so when Jesus talks about forgiveness, one of the things that I love about that is we're kicking and screaming, no, I don't want to forgive because I am the victim and this was done to me. And yet he's saying, yes, you're right. If you don't forgive, you can't live. You can't live a full life. And even if your spouse doesn't come back, being able to forgive is possible, and it's healing. My dad had an affair and left and did not come back. And I mean, to this day, if he was still alive and he came back to my mother and said that he would come back, my mother would take him, which, there's so many dynamics in that. Abandonment as a child and just a lot of feelings, and you have to be willing to go there and engage those feelings and understand. I mean, but God, truly, but God, walking you through a process of healing your heart and understanding where that pain comes from and where that anger comes from and how you can embrace that and bring healing into your life. That is paramount, no matter what happens going forward, for you to be healthy and whole. And I think the other thing to realize is we all play a role. There's, in every marriage, nobody's perfect. It's two sinners saved by grace that are walking this road together. And so also coming to this place where you can own what is yours to own and recognize what isn't yours to own.
Right.
Because I think a lot of times, especially with infidelity, there's a lot of research that speaks to this, that spouses will be like, if only we had more sex, if only I had done this, if only I had. And the truth is that it's not about that. There's a deeper, much deeper issue. I think the hopeful side of all of this is that the research also shows that if you have just 20% of positive history, just 20%, and you seek professional help, the chances of your marriage, not just surviving, not just getting back together and surviving, but truly thriving, is around 90%. And that speaks to getting the help that you need, going to someone who is qualified to help you to walk this road and to understand what was happening and how do we make a way forward together. And I would say to someone who is in this situation, they're struggling, perhaps their spouse has left, and they've asked their spouse to go to counseling with them, even if your spouse says, absolutely not, I am not willing, you go.
Yes.
And
I
you
agree.
focus on you.
Right.
I agree.
Because my friend Michelle Weiner Davis speaks to, it takes two to tango, but it only takes one to change the dance.
Yes.
And I love that.
That's
that
great.
Is so true. So true.
That is good. Well, Julie, thank you for sharing these 6 myths with us. And I know that this is going to be an episode that our listeners are going to want to go back and listen to a couple times so they can grab all of those nuggets. How can people get in touch with WinShape if they want to look at some of the available retreats?
They can go to winshapemarriage.org and they can see all of the different retreats that we offer. They can also follow us on Instagram. We put out a lot of resources, a lot of helpful resources that people can download and utilize in their marriage relationship that are helpful and moving them in the direction of thriving. So either one of those places would give them information about the different retreats that we're offering and ways to connect with us as well.
Perfect.
That's fantastic.
Thank you. Well, thank you for being with us today. I really appreciate it.
You did great.
My pleasure. It has really been a joy
Yes.
to get to spend some time with you all.
Thank
you have helped many people today.
Yes.
If we can help you in any way, we invite you to visit the website of Rejoice Marriage Ministries at www.rejoiceministries.org. Thanks for joining us today as we proclaim that God heals hurting marriages.